Coming from a dance background, dance is space, time, and force. And if you alter one of those elements, you have a different dance. And that's really what the pandemic has done for organizations. It's like you just have to make up a new dance, whether your timeline has changed or how you're performing in a space or virtually, and the amount of activity that you do and interaction with others.
Hello and welcome to Folk Unlocked and to our session, Changing the Tune, Pandemic Resilience and Organizational Recovery. I'm Jenny Filipetti, and you just heard Jan Newcomb of the National Coalition for Arts Preparedness and Emergency Response and Keeper, whom you'll meet more in just a couple minutes. This session is part of the Changing the Tune project, a collaboration between the Folk Alliance International and Majestic Collaborations, the organization I work with, made possible thanks to the support of Performing Arts Readiness. The idea of this project is to develop the tools and resources and identify and share from within the network best practices and strategies for emergency response and organizational resilience, starting, of course, with the response we're all confronting together, the COVID-19 pandemic, but looking at how we can use that to prepare ourselves to respond and serve our communities in face of uncertainty and future crisis as well. We're so excited to meet and work with you all over the next year. If you would, we'd love to hear already what organization you're from and where you're tuning in from in the chat. You can find more about the whole project, including a companion resource for this session and the breakouts with links and specific tips and resources at folk.org/changingthetune, all hyphenated. We recorded this session in advance, so I'm time traveling to you right now from Milan, Italy. I'm a white woman in my early 30s with a little longer than shoulder length brown hair clipped back and green eyes and a black t-shirt. Behind me is a bookshelf filled with some odd objects, plus, of course, books. Okay, let's meet our other presenters, coming to you from all across the States.
I'm Laurie. I'm the Vice President of the Contemporary Division at Skyline Artist Agency. I am a white man with Mediterranean skin tone and features and somewhat graying short black hair. I'm wearing more or less the default rock and roll black t-shirt and jeans and black rimmed glasses, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table, overlooking my casual but comfy living room with my couple of guitars in the background. And I'm coming to you from sunny Sarasota, Florida today.
Hello, I'm Mollie Quinlan-Hayes. I am a middle-aged white woman, brunette with glasses and freckles, wearing a winter white jacket. And my pronouns are she and hers. And I am coming to you from the land of the Eastern Cherokee and the Lower Muskogee Creek people.
Hi, I'm Jan Newcomb, and I'm a white woman with blonde hair with horizontal gray striped sweater on, sitting in my office in Corning, New York, which is the land, it's in the upstate Finger Lakes, and it's a land of Haudenosaunee, which we knew as children as the Iroquois Confederacy of Seneca, Mohawk, Cayuga, Oneida, Onondaga, and Tuscarora Nation tribes. I am the Executive Director of the National Coalition for Arts Preparedness and Emergency Response, commonly known as NCAPER, and I'm also the Performing Arts Coordinator of the PAR project, which is Performing Arts Readiness.
My name is Huling, and I am the Artistic Director of Handsome Little Devils. My pronouns are she and her, and I am zooming from my basement. I have a background that has a mountainscape with a lot of evergreen trees. I have long, dark blonde hair. I'm wearing a green blazer and a green necklace, and I have blue eyes.
I have to be honest, these folks ended up sharing way too much valuable insight for one 30-minute presentation. How we decided to break it up is that in this session, we're kicking it off with 3 of the really high-level ways of thinking that we're finding to be pretty across the board applicable, kind of like lighthouses to your planning over the next few months, regardless of which specific next steps you're considering taking. We hope this sets the stage and provides some common language so that then when we move out into different breakout sessions, we can talk more hands-on tips and suggestions for some of those specific next directions. And also it can kind of enter into our framework as we all explore the other incredible sessions throughout this amazing week. Let's connect first with Jan and Cole again on what this is all about.
your planning isn't planning the season, folks. It's how you make decisions, how you operate. That's the core planning that's going to make the success or make a healthy organization. Don't go because I'm scared that I'm going to get ill from sitting next to someone. That's never been experienced before that I know of, because I wasn't around in 1918. But those are helping us to kind of do the work that we should have been doing all along in making sure our programming and activities and operations are what we say we want to be and do, and that they're mission driven.
Our company brings together live entertainment and art, and because of that live entertainment element, the art is often very interactive. Project Joy Bomb is a series of art-based activations that are meant to encourage people to social distance, encourage social mask wearing, and to make staying at home a little bit more joyful. So this was what came out of a meeting with our advisory board when they kind of said, hey, everything you guys do is illegal right now, but it's also more important than ever. And we were like, okay, how do we take that information and bring it out into the community and serve a need? And that was a big part of it, was really making sure that we are serving a need, that we're actually, helping a community by working with community leaders and with city officials and that sort of thing to make sure we're really safe and bringing joy to the people who need it the most.
The answers to exactly how you do that are going to look very different for every performer organization. But the more we started talking with our panelists, with those of you at Folk Alliance whom we've had the chance to meet so far, the more we started seeing that pandemic resilience planning and emergency response design in general takes a kind of systems design view, almost an ecological perspective. What ecological niche are you filling? To answer that question, you have to be looking both inward at what you have, what you value, what you do, and what you need, and outward at the same time to ask yourself, what is it that you're bringing to your community? Resilience strategy step 1 is definitely inviting everyone to the table, taking stock of the skills and physical resources you have together as an artist, an organization, and within your community, as well as the gaps and missing pieces. With so many puzzle pieces to all fit together, prioritizing diversity, inclusion, and access in your process is critical to be able to see the complete picture. Who are you serving, and what do you do uniquely that can start to be the basis for making decisions about the kinds of work to prioritize as you move forward?
The healthiest organizations were the ones that pivoted directly into deeper DEIA work during the crisis.
I find the organizations that are not intrinsically involved in their community are really going to be in the most trouble. You have to be relevant to those you serve and perform for.
I also think it's important to take stock of what are your skills. What do you bring to the table? Are you a cheerleader? Are you good at supporting people? That is necessary. You may not be the person that's going to go and take charge, but you may be the person that can help go get the sodas, go get the pizzas ordered. There are all these things that have to happen to make progress. And if you can fill one of those roles, you should. There's also people that are sitting there that don't think of themselves as leaders, but they are.
There are some artists who are just naturally really, really good in an intimate situation in terms of their rapport with the audience. Even in a theater at a live show, you feel the connection and they interact with the audience, with some sort of a dialogue. It's obviously not a two-way dialogue, but it somehow engages them. And I think, that type of situation, you can maintain the intimacy with maybe a little bit less production if you're strong in that area. So you have to take into account what your strengths are and make sure you deliver that in the live stream.
I would also like to point out there was one if I named the organization, you would all know. They felt very strongly in these discussions early on when, they had all this time because everybody's working from home and nothing was being performed. But where they realized the had never really included all of the staff in discussions and in getting ideas passed around. And they started doing that and realized what a wealth of information and skill sets that were part of their team already that they had not been aware of. And it's kind of a part of the diversity inclusion idea that we're philosophy and really think that we are promoting systematically and throughout an organization. I think that this organization, we're just stunned at what they had been missing.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of one of the behaviors that we all now have to have, which is dissolving silos, both internal and external. But yes, you know, the old job descriptions really don't suit us anymore. And so what can you surface? What talents, expertise that fall outside of someone's job description? Going back to arts organizations at a crossroads, the piece that we're developing right now is a toolkit for organizations to actually start to collect some of that information about job functions and capacities, so that if you do need to restructure, or even just for business continuity, you start to have that information documented. But I think those conversations, again, let go of the hierarchy, let go of the, you know, job descriptions, and let people's talents and abilities come up to the surface.
Every artist who has performed live has a lot of skills way beyond a lot of other people, especially like in the corporate world, you know, where you might have a very repeatable 9-to-5, you know, day-to-day rhythm. When you're a live performer, you know, so many things can go wrong. You have navigated so many issues just to put on your show. And so I think that there's a lot of value to that. I think that performers should not underestimate what they can bring to the table, especially in the festival world. You know, for us, it's second nature. All the things that we deal with, putting on live festivals, doing music, doing, you know, performances in these very interesting situations. You know, you never know when a storm is going to roll in, or, you know, there's going to be some sort of a weird emergency, or, you know, the highway is going to get washed out down the road, or whatever it is. You know, there's so many unknowns. And that really makes performers the perfect people to deal with situations like this when things are uncertain, because our lives are always uncertain.
Resilience strategy 2. We mentioned ecological niches before, and just like in ecology, resilience lies in diversity of people in the conversation, as we just heard, but also of revenue streams and programming, the kind of content you're offering up to your community.
Yeah, we don't know what the next, you know, even when we get through this COVID-19, there's going to be another, I think, you know, we're going to be subject to more of these types of events. And so I think that the more, you know, one of the kind of visuals I have is an organization that has their programming in different buckets, you know, some being live, some being online, some being, you know, delivered in just to different, you know, sectors, different demographics. And that it might be at any given time that you can do 3 out of your 5 buckets because of the environment. So just, I think thinking that creatively about your programming and different methods for delivering it and deciding on how to do it is going to be another kind of future way of thinking.
Mixing it up. If you're going to do it regularly, you maybe have some guests. You know, that We Banjo 3 actually did a variety show for their Christmas show. They had other artists guesting who also participated in the affiliate situation, so they were rewarded for selling tickets. That's a neat idea. Sort of like you would maybe co-bill out on a live tour or something. But I think environment, you know, mixing up what it's going to look like, maybe even making a theme. I know that many artists have done, we're going to play our second album in its entirety on this show. That's a good idea. But I think just fall in line with the things we've said, keep the production values high, keep the audience interested by mixing it up. And you got to think about those things.
We also changed the format. It wasn't always a mobile thing. When numbers started going down, we did a walk-in sort of like show in a parking lot. So everybody got a little parking space and got to bring a picnic and watch the show. And so we just had to be really, innovative and really try to solve problems every step of the way in a very ever-changing landscape. We really had to listen to that inner voice, and we've had to do that over and over again. Is it right? Is it the right thing to do? Is it doing the most good? And if one of our performers got sick or one staff member got sick because of us being there, it would not be the right thing to do. Same thing when the protest started. It was not the right thing for us to be out there doing Project Joy Bomb in that moment. We had to shift, and we had to support our community in a different way during that time. Yeah, I think that that's something that performing artists often struggle with, because it is so hard to make a living as a performer and as a musician. And, it's so challenging that it's very hard to turn down work. And what I would say is that sometimes turning down the work is actually poising you for a much bigger opportunity. It also makes you sort of hard to get, we had to turn down a lot of things, but it also makes people have a little FOMO. Like, they're like, wait a minute, we want you now. And I think that that's, again, it's thinking it long term. It's a longer term strategy for performers and musicians to really think about, if you take every single thing that comes your way, you might be missing a bigger opportunity that's sitting on the horizon. And you also might be ignoring what the community is needing in that moment, because you're so focused on just gigging, getting that gig, getting the next gig. If you just take that step back, which I think the pandemic allowed us all to do, really take that moment to really check in and say, what types of shows do I want to be doing? What types of engagement do I want to be a part of? And, really guiding your decisions based on that, instead of just who's hiring me right now.
Keeping it a little rare is probably going to be more successful. And if you think about it, that is right in line with what happens live. I mean, you would not, especially if you're, let's say, a 500 or 1,000 ticket selling artist in a market, you don't go to that market more than once a year if you want to sustain those numbers or grow those numbers. So you can't ask your fans to come sign online with you once a week and think it's going to hold up over a long period of time.
Resilience strategy 3, stronger together. This is not news to many of you watching. Over half of the presenter organizations that filled out our Changing the Tune survey so far have already been doing incredible work that we hope to be able to share out so everyone can learn from it. From joining forces to co-present festivals, to partnering with new producers so you can do online, even sharing equipment and resources with local downtown business districts, community organizations. There are so many ways you've been finding meaningful connections in the face of these immense challenges and supporting your programming and work through it. Broadly, we're seeing these in 2 major ways. First off, connecting, collaborating, and sharing information among others within your community doing the same kinds of work. In addition to some of the examples that I just talked through that we've seen from the survey, the National Independent Talent Organization is another really rich example of where this is going on.
That organization was obviously founded out of the crisis. Frank Riley of High Road, it wasn't necessarily his sole idea, but Frank, being one of the more prominent independent agencies in the US, had been invited to sit in on some Zoom calls that were going on between the titans of the industry, let's say Rapino from Live Nation, Marciano from AEG, heads of WME and CAA, the major agencies, because they were all, of course, in shock and in upheaval about what are we going to do? And he was fortunately invited to sit in on some of those calls, and he heard some disturbing things on those calls about fears that they might, collaborate or even coerce to do things that would be highly promoter-centric and not necessarily artist or agent-centric. And it concerned him, and so he wrote an email to basically the 14 member agencies, who were all other independent boutique-sized agencies. And after a couple of calls, it became obvious that we all are in the same boat, and we all have the exact same problems, and we all have a great affection for each other's independent spirit and intelligence and commitment to artists. as opposed to the dollar, like we're doing it for the right reasons, and how sharing was just so beneficial. And it just quickly hit everyone like, you know what, we need to organize this, and we need to get a lobbyist. And so we immediately started interviewing lobbying firms, and that was basically the start of it.
So I think having a better understanding of who does what well, I think, like, for instance, the Artist Relief Fund that was done by many organizations, pulling together their resources and doing that was just a phenomenal undertaking, as well as Save Our Stages. Those were people who had never really done advocacy and kind of did circles around the cultural advocacy group that I'm part of. I mean, they just went ahead and did it and contacted it and got legislators to understand, you realize how many people are out of work. It's not just, we're all going to go out of business and probably will never reopen. And somehow they got that message through and did it. So I think listening and reacting more quickly, working together in a more proactive, less repetitive or duplicative way is something that I have learned personally.
In addition to Save Our Stages, NATO is in the midst of some other really interesting projects ongoing. Agencies and managers are invited to join the organization and access some of the resources they're developing. Others can get involved in town halls and just being in touch with things that are going on in that network. So we do have links on the session companion page so you can learn more, or hop into Mark's breakout session right after this if you've got questions. We've also seen organizations responding with resilience through new partnerships, not just with fellow colleague organizations, but also local governments, adjacent industries, and corporate partners. For a lot of them, that's opened up new opportunities, in-kind resource sharing, even creating new kinds of events and revenue streams.
I would say look for an entity in your community that does something really well that you may need to know and don't know, but and they may not be an arts organization at all. It might be, I don't know, anything else. Might be a business of sorts. I remember Corning Museum of Glass when they were opening for paying. It used to be free. They flew everybody down to Disney. In Disney World, to figure out how it was they organized the experience when you come and get a ticket, and what do you do and how do you organize it, and there's a whole science behind that. I mean, that's just an example of, like, go beyond your cultural partners, and if there's somebody out there that does something really well that you need to know, lob onto them.
And kind of looking at the flip side, I think finding ways to deploy your assets and make use of them when you can't do it in other ways. An example I think of is in Atlanta, the Alliance Theater has developed what they call Alliance at Work. And so they're using their artists to provide corporate training. So, professional presence, storytelling, for marketing people, anti-bias training. I mean, those are the things that artists can do. And so that's an earned revenue stream and also a way for them to keep their artists active and, spreading those skills in the community. So I thought was great.
We solved these problems because we needed to put on a show in a park that didn't have power 10 years ago. And now to have that come full circle and say, hey, we need to put on a show in a park without power. Like, can you show up and do this? That was really cool. But it was two things. There was one, knowing, having the connection and being in communication with our community all the time. So that's one thing, is just really letting the community know, what assets do you have that you are willing to offer up. The second part is actually showing up. There's so many times when I think artists think they're not the right person for the moment. And if everyone thinks that way, there's never going to be a right person for the moment. Like, we were the right people because someone called us and we had the thing and we could show up and we could help. And that was, really the goal. And I think that that's something that a lot of people need to start thinking about, even when things go back to normal. How do you really fill a need in the community, and who's out there that can help you fill that need?
It's having that 30,000 foot viewpoint. The old saying is, you're not in the train business, you're in the transportation business. I mean, you're not in the business of doing 6 performances of 5 different theatrical performances. You're in the business of bringing theater to audiences and the spoken word or the music. And, when you look at it that way, instead of the actual product, but the idea of what you're trying to do, I think it just opens up so much more, a broader aspect to being able to continue on as an organization.
But we also wanted to know, what can we do now, today, this week, to prepare for these next few months? First of all, literally right now, actually, we invite you to join us for breakout sessions with our panelists, for any questions you have about what you just heard, but also to talk more hands-on about specific next step approaches you might be considering, and to meet others in the Folk Alliance who either have been there before and have advice or lessons, or are finding themselves at a similar crossroads as you are. All you have to do is pop into the breakout session on the Folk Unlocked agenda. It's the Changing the Tune Next Steps Live Q&A. And a wonderful Folk Alliance volunteer will help direct you to the specific room that you're interested in from kind of a main lobby. You can read more about them in the event description, but Cole's room is all about developing partnerships, whether you have questions about that or stories of your own. Mark's room is focused on virtual event design, although he can also speak to questions about Save Our Stages or other industry developments you've got your eye on. Jen and Mollie will walk you through scenario planning and how to make a plan, even if you're not sure where to even begin in your next steps. And Matt Kowal, the co-founder of Majestic Collaborations, is leading a more coffee table conversation around where are we headed, just as far as intersections of the heritage of folk and society, and some of the models for employing artists and festival and event workers in times of crisis, when, as Cole mentioned earlier, they may be out of work but are needed more than ever in actually multiple ways. Also, don't forget the session companion we made for you. It's got links to resources about these topics, plus a video with some of this next steps kind of specific advice from our presenters that you can watch at your convenience, even if that's after the conference. We know it's a really busy week. You'll find it linked on our project portal, folk.org/changingthetune, all hyphenated. That's also where in just a couple weeks you'll find our resource guide to designing inclusive virtual events and all future project resources. Oh yeah, and one last thing from Jen and Mollie. Remember that wherever you are in your planning process for what comes next, you're in the right place.
My attitude about is start where you are and no guilt. Whatever you have, even if it's just a data backup plan and a fire drill, okay, great. Let's build from that. So
it's like contracts, initial contracts when you're starting out as a performer. It's probably just like, well, you owe me this much and I want to have. Well, as you become more experienced, you say, I want my very own room to warm up in or something. And, you start adding things. And that's just what a readiness plan is as you think more and get more involved.
We hope at least one of the breakout sessions aligns with something that's on your mind. And we look forward to meeting you there and for you to meet and maybe reconnect with old friends as well, even if virtually this year. Please also let us know in the breakouts or right here in the chat what other resources would be the most helpful for you right now in reactivating as a presenter or performer, and we'll start to build those out into what we work on next. For now, thanks so much for being here with us today. Have a great start to Folk Unlocked. We can't wait to see you around.
Sometimes you get way down before you get right. As the night falls, she makes bird calls without a sound. She